We called something, or more specifically, you called something a few weeks ago when we last talked about it, and we were talking about Vince McMahon possibly unloading stock. Now, a couple of days ago, 30% of TKO stock of Vince McMahon's is being unloaded, which is worth around $700 million at this point. I've got more rhetoric here afterwards, but your immediate reaction to that?
Vince McMahon, my address is it's more than just a pretty face, I guess, right? Or well, not even that, I guess. But look, this just makes common sense, and you know, I don't know if the other part of this, if you're going to hit on it. The TKO board had met and sort of somehow this was released. I don't know if that was leaked or what, but basically the people on the board were saying, look, this guy's got a lot of baggage, and if we put him on the board, it's going to make us look bad.
Well, more specifically, Ari Emanuel himself went on, don't know if it's CNBC or something like that, and named Vince McMahon by name, and basically said what you said. He's got a lot of baggage for two different reasons. One, the NDAs, of course, and two, federal investigation into, we're not still quite sure yet, but he's definitely under investigation.
Yeah. It's who knows what it could be, because we won't even dabble into all that. But this. I mean, let's face it: UFC, TKO, and Endeavor. Those are huge conglomerates. And in this day and age, the last thing they can do is go out and hire the guy that has whatever baggage, and especially that kind of baggage in today's world. So I was a bit shocked, because I would have thought that they would have immediately announced that, and there was several month period where it was like sort of meandering through there, and I'm sure that probably has to do with legalities and what the wording of the contract and everything was, but did not shock me when I saw it. Like, oh, okay, even a broken clock is right twice a day, right? So we sort of stumbled on that one. But look, I mean, nobody should feel bad for Vince. I'll separate for a second. Everybody knows my personal feelings, or my feelings even for their product. But you can't argue with success, and when you whatever, put all that baggage into the blender. But Vince McMahon took wrestling to the stratosphere. There were a lot of really successful promoters and bookers and great performers over the years in our industry. None of them ever had the foresight to say, "Hey, maybe we could take it there." Wrestling was always, as I was coming up, was sort of blue collar. That's what like the working people do and stuff. And I remember like when I was right prior to breaking into the business, going and because my dad had always taken me to the Pittsburgh Civic Arena. And I remember like looking around and thinking like, it looks different in here. Like it wasn't all darkened. There was no smoking in the building. So like it used to be when I was a kid, you see the smoke wafting up into the lights. There's a guy in a business suit. There's a woman dressed nicely. I mean, it was like you could tell the clientele was changing. And then when we came into the business, or I came into the business, you're looking around. It was like Vince had waved the magic wand. It went from like a Wizard of Oz, like, suddenly we're not in Kansas anymore. And, and you can't argue with that. At one point, I don't know what it was at the time of the sale. Excuse me, but the WWE was the sixth most recognizable brand on the planet. Now, when you stop and think about all the different products in your grocery store and commercials on your television and everything else, to be number 6 on that list is pretty incredible. So like, kudos to Vince. Like, he's an incredible businessman, but it's even for somebody as powerful as him, with as much money as he has, that reputation has a tendency to catch up to you. Like, what's that old saying? None of us is getting out of here alive. We're all gonna to look into the mirror far before the pearly gates and be judged by what we were here. And I think Vince the same thing. So it was no crystal ball. It was just common sense and looking at that. It's going to be interesting to see what he does beyond this.
I actually muted the cough, but I still said excuse me to sort of break that up. I'm going to give you a bit of a stock run through since TKO became a thing on September 12th. So the TKO stock opened at 103 $105.05 on September 12th, peaked on the 19th of September at $105.50, and has since tanked nearly 25% since, with the current price being $79.26 as we record this, taking a sharp dip from a recent high this past Thursday of, I didn't write that down, it was like $85 something, not coincidentally right when Vince announced his selling of the shares. So this is clearly affecting TKO's bottom line, of course. But 30% is very, very significant. Does this signify one of two things? Do you think this is going to signify his exit from WWE? And two, do you think this signifies that he's going to unload all of his stock?
Most likely. Well, again, I think that'll be contingent on what's Vince's next chapter. The one thing I am pretty certain of is I don't see Vince McMahon wandering off into the sunset and the twilight of his life. He's a workaholic, and which is big part of the reason why he was able to sell that for $9 billion. I think it's more likely that he'll unload some of it. If past trend proves future, he'll buy it once it bottoms out. But this is one of the concerns. Yeah, there's no question in my mind that board, when this guy went public and said those things, they knew, what was coming, or at least the big possibility of it. And anytime Vince is a very public figure, right? So he's very well known. I've always said the most intelligent thing he ever did is to create the Mr. McMahon character, because I think there's a tendency amongst a lot of people that don't know him to say, oh, okay, well, that's just the guy he plays on TV. Well, that's really him. That's his, there is no stretch in that. So, and as such, I'm sure there's a lot of people that bought stock in part because of him, like him and his product and all of that, being so well known and so recognizable that when people hear, well, they're getting rid of him, well, you can see how a lot of them could say, well, it's not going to be successful. Without Vince, it can't work. And so get rid of it. My guess is they've certainly would have weathered that, and at least the possibility of it that if he dumps his stock, it's going to drop. But then again, as past proves prologue, if it proves prologue, he'll buy it back at a much cheaper stock. So not a bad little withdrawal from the bank, right? You go and take your money out, and you go back a couple weeks later, and there's twice the money that you left in there because the value goes back up. Vince is no dummy, and I'm sure there's probably a good chunk of that. Again, it's just my guess, but that he's okay. We do that to me. Well, let me show you what I can do to your stock, and give you a little taste of it. But
so more strategic than a clean exit, you're thinking?
That would be my guess. Just based again on watching Vince, I learned a long time ago that Vince is one of those X factors that you really can't peg. You can't sit down and say, okay, James, let me give you a definition of Vince. And some parts of that'll be right, but then tomorrow he'll do something else and go, well, never saw that one. That's a new chapter in that book. He's a very bright guy, and he certainly knows what he's doing. I don't see him just washing it off. Vince ain't gonna have to worry about whether he can buy the family Christmas presents this Christmas, right? This is the stuff that Vince, I would think, does just like you and I worry about taking the garbage out and walking the dog and making sure the groceries are bought. Vince goes around and figures out like how he can topple the world. How can he get rid of this government or make this person's life miserable? So I think that if he retires, it'll be retired to his computer, so he can say, okay, let's see what we can do to Warren Buffett's stock today, and things like that. He's never count Vince McMahon out.